Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to talk today about a little bit about, my name is Nancy Lazkani, by the way. I'm from Icon Media, and I'll be introducing these smart folks over here in just a minute. But today I wanted to talk about today's environment, the media environment, and how fragmented it is. It's really not, it's not very easy like it used to be. I'm an old broad, so I've been in this business for a really long time. But it's not as easy as it used to be. There used to be one channel, TV, radio, that was about it, newspaper, and print. But today there's such a multifaceted, omni-channel fragmented marketplace out there, and it's really sort of the Wild West. It's what do we do, where do we go, how do we reach our consumers, how do we reach the right people? Are millennials watching TV? No, they're not. Yes, they are. There's this big tug of war going on in the media industry. And our clients are constantly asking, are we doing the right thing? Are we going in the right places? Are we asking the right questions? Are we influencing our consumers? And the answer is yes. So before they're really hungry for the right information, and they're hungry for smart information. So we need to figure out and tap into what is influencing people, where do we go to make those influencers respond and take action. And excuse me, but I do have a cold, so I'm not crying, I am nervous, but this is just an excuse. So before we get into talking, we're gonna have a question and answer period. Before we get into that, I thought I'd kick off the session by sharing some key insights that I thought were really relevant for today. So before we do that, let me first introduce our very smart panelists. Kierie Courtney, who came all the way from Florida to join us today. She's the VP, hold on, I'm multitasking here. She is our VP of Global Direct Consumer at Jarden Consumer Solutions. It's a division of Newell Brands. They were just acquired several months ago. And they have products like Crock-Pot, Mr. Coffee, Food Saver, Oster, Sunbeam, Margaritaville, and she leads all the global digital strategies for this company. And she has a great passion for continuing to improve the process and the consumer experience. So conversations and topics will be concentrated around that for Kierie today. We have Neeraj Gunsagar, who's the Chief Marketing Officer at TrueCar. His role is to oversee the company's marketing strategy, which includes consumer brand marketing, partner and dealer marketing, corporate communications, business analytics, consumer acquisitions, the doggy doors, in and out. He's also responsible for helping develop the team to implement product improvements for both consumer and dealers, and that is a major task. So welcome, Neeraj.
Thank you.
Boris Shimanovsky. Boris serves as the Chief Creative Officer at Guthy-Renker and President of GRM, which is GR Match, a division of Guthy-Renker. And he is one of the largest and most respected companies, it is one of the largest and most respected companies in the world, I believe. And his creative insights have helped lead Guthy-Renker's aggressive growth plans and help implement marketing and brand strategies for IT Cosmetics, Tradesy, Avenue Technologies, just to name a few. And Boris helps develop the overall marketing and consumer experience strategy to grow Guthy-Renker's sales acquisition with multi-channel direct response marketing and brand management. So that's quite a task as well, Boris. Not to mention that they just sold and were very intricate in selling IT Cosmetics for $1.2 billion, which is an 8-year-old company. So congratulations. Well, Guthy happens to be sitting in the house tonight, so thank you for coming. So let's get started into some of the key insights, and we're just gonna take about 8 slides here and then go in and talk a little bit more. I'll have some questions for our panelists, and then we'll leave a little bit at the end if you guys have any questions. So we'll keep it a little bit casual here. So I'm going to share with you some insights on a media review study that I found. And in my quest to try and answer some of these questions for myself and for our clients for the future, I found this great study that it's an A marketing charts debrief from 2015, and it's a 35-page debrief. So if anybody wants that, go to mc@iconmediadirect.com, and I'll be happy to share that with you. And I need to, oh, sorry, I'm multitasking. Do that, thank you. So first of all, let me share with you, what does the overall industry look like as far as media spend, and how does that landscape pair up with the different categories of advertising? So TV advertising, offline only, still represents the lion's share of media spend. And it's projected to be about $77.7 million in 2018. Digital internet is obviously fast and moving right sort of on par with television, but still underneath. So TV is still sort of the 800-pound gorilla, if you will. And then you take a look at radio advertising, which is third. Newspaper and consumer magazines and things like that are going to basically continue to see a decline and are plummeting as we speak. So that's sort of a dying breed, if you will, for some of the younger generation, but it's also very relevant for some of the older generation, which we're going to, depending on what your caveat is or who your consumer is, we're going to see a little bit of insights into that today. So I'm always asked, people are always telling me that millennials are not watching TV. How many people are watching TV? Well, everyone is still watching TV. So TV connected devices are higher among millennials by 23%, but TV still accounts for 24% of total media usage among all adults. TV represents 30% total media usage among persons 18 to 34, but 59% of people 50 plus. So you can sort of see in the red here that this is sort of your lineup of where people are watching TV and how many people are watching TV. TV is the most heavily consumed platform among adults of all ages. On average, adults spend 35 hours a week watching TV. Not me, I'm working too many hours. I want to get in there with them. Millennials aged 18 to 34 still watch 20 hours of TV per week. A lot of multitasking going on here, and you'll see a few charts later. Adults 18 to plus are viewing and watching on average 5.7 days a week, and the millennial age is 4.8 days per week. We just need to make sure we work harder to find them. The average time spent per day is 4.3 hours of 18 plus. So there's still a lot of hours watching TV at different hours of the day. And the orange dot is app and website smartphone. There's still high consumption there, as well as radio, which kind of surprises me. Media reach results and advertising recall. This to me was probably a very, very important and very relevant chart for today. TV is really the only mass reachable outlet for media, and when asked in this study, when asked how often did you watch TV or when did you watch it last, 88.8% responded that they watched TV in the last week. And this is what's compelling to me, is that of that 88.8%, 59.2% had brand recall of advertising messages. So what's also interesting is high usage of 84.4% on Google search and that type of thing. But the brand recall, if you're Google searching something and an ad comes up, the recall on any display ad or something like that is only 19.9%. So that to me was very interesting and actually kind of bodes with some of the direct response tactics that we utilize in the marketplace, where we'll place an advertisement on television and see a spike in results. We'll do maybe a banner ad or something on a digital platform through search and not see a lot of return. So this sort of is in line with what we're seeing in the marketplace. So influencers, what are people influenced by? If your mother tells you to do it, if your brother tells you to do it or whatever, you're probably going to do it. So that is probably the one thing in the top of the influencer marketplace, is when you have a friend or family or somebody influencing you to make a purchase or introduce you to new products. TV ads still led all paid media, with 26.4% of respondents claiming to have been influenced to purchase a product or service during the past 6 months. Consumer reviews, email, opt-in catalogs, and mail also influenced a purchase decision. And mobile display ads have low stated influence with the intent to purchase. So when you break this out by demographic, it changes from the overall U.S. adults. The U.S. adults definitely in the older generation skewed towards print. Among paid media, TV ads are top reported purchase influencers for millennials and Gen Xers. Now that kind of surprised me, because a lot of millennials are here that they hate advertising, they don't want to see ads, and that is probably true on their mobile devices and things like that. But when it comes to television, there's sort of an acumen or something that we've grown up with, and we are used to seeing TV ads in advertisements. And whether they want to admit it or not, or anybody wants to admit it or not, we are influenced by a TV advertisement on television. And these stats kind of bear that out. Millennials are the most likely generation to say that ads influence them despite spending less time watching them. So when we do get them, they are still influenced by that information. Millennials are heavily influenced by social ads. and online consumer reviews, while older demos are influenced by print and mail. So without further ado, I think that leads us into our questions and answers. So I wanted to talk to all of you and ask you a few questions. And Neeraj, I'm going to start with you. So being a digital native, being a digital native, what were your marketing assumptions coming into TrueCar? Can you just explain about it? What the difference is?
Does digital native mean I'm a millennial?
It depends. Maybe in your head.
Because I teeter the line, so I'm back and forth. So a little bit of background. So I was a private equity investor for 12 years before joining TrueCar. And as we did a bunch of stuff over there, I slowly took over the concept of consumer acquisition and marketing. And when I went into the position, I would have never, ever, ever, in a million years at that point, said that TV was going to be my number one acquisition vehicle. And luckily for us, we've got a pretty hardcore team of data scientists and algorithm guys and a bunch of people recording all the stuff we do when it comes to TV spot response data and traffic spikes. And very quickly, it was easy to see that from a short-term perspective and a long-term perspective, that TV was the best way for us to drive traffic along the automotive journey, right? So we've got a much more involved purchase journey. It's usually around 6 months when you buy a car. And so you can talk to people throughout that whole journey. And it was fascinating to see that TV also improves a bunch of stuff in your Google quality scores, right? So you get a bunch of direct traffic, so all of a sudden your SEO comes up. So there's a lot of different interesting factors that TV plays in the entire product role for a company like TrueCar, which is an online marketplace, more digital marketplace for automotive. And so within, I think, 6 months, I quickly shut down everything on the digital side. I mean, there's a lot of stuff thrown at people, right? There's programmatic, and then there's all these social ads, and you have agencies trying to confuse you about what you should be spending money on because they want you to spend money on things. But the reality is and this is kind of our secret sauce, and I guess I'm giving a little bit of it away, but Google and Facebook cover 99% of you guys. Like, you can basically speak to you guys through Google's platform and Facebook's platform at the nth degree, so why confuse it with everything else out there? And we've just taken that strategy, and it's worked pretty well for us. I mean, for a big ticket purchase like Automotive, which is a $30,000 purchase, TV allows you to tell a story, because you get 30-second spots where your creative is really important. So we spend a lot of time analyzing our consumers and what's the value prop of TrueCar and how are dealers different, and we're allowed to tell that story on the TV side. And then as we think about radio is something we buy a lot as well. You continue to tell the story, and then digital, you go attack them through the Google side of the business, which is search words and intent. And so we've taken a very simplified approach to it, but personally for me, I've been fascinated by linear television's growth within our system, and it also, the last 2 to 3 years, there's a big arbitrage opportunity because everybody bought into the digital world, so we got really great pricing on the TV side. And once again, we look for ARB opportunities whenever we buy media, and this was a great one. So that's kind of how from being a millennial or a pseudo millennial, because I am bordering, it was very easy to see that my media mix could go a combination of offline and online.
That's great. Thank you, Neeraj. So Kierie, along with that, with the rise of digital services and product marketing, what's more important, technology or the consumer experience? I know they're both important, obviously, you can't have one without the other, but can you just sort of wrap around that a little bit and tell me about your philosophy on that?
I would absolutely say it's kind of a no-brainer for me. Consumer experience is what you have to focus on, and technology is a piece of that. So I think there are many, many times that companies will lead with technology as opposed to the consumer experience and not really understand the insights that are driving what consumers need and what they want and what their jobs to be done are, or even where those consumers are in their purchase consideration. So we work a lot with JCS and on my team about really understanding our consumers specifically, what their needs are, where they are, and how do we really use technology as well as content and many other things to deliver against that specific experience. Because I really feel like if you can't deliver against what consumers are expecting from your brand, you're going to really disappoint them, and it's going to be much, much harder to bring them back than it was to get them in the
That's really good. Thank you, Kierie. So, Boris, what kind of trends do you see in the marketplace that show, give this group some advice on, with the trends that we're talking about, the digital platforms and the consumer experience? What is it that you look for when you partner with companies, and just give us some ideas on the trends and what you see that's important to your business and what your business model is?
Sure. So, good question. I think it all comes down to consumer has to see the value in the product that we want them to buy. So I think there are many ways to do that. I think TrueCar does that amazingly well in 30 seconds. I don't think we can do that as well in 30 seconds. Our spot lengths are usually longer. We have, again, 28 minutes and 30 seconds infomercials, all the way down to 30-second spots, in some cases 15s. But most of our spots are longer format, so it is about telling a story. It is about differentiating yourself and really explaining to the consumer the journey of where they are now, what might work for them with this product offering, why we're different. We have to present it in a very unique way, and of course, well, to us, I think you know this before you called me up here. TV works better than anything that we have found.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that said, I think it's really understanding. There's a lot of talk out there about bots and fraudulent things that are going on when it comes to ad farms and things like that. And Neeraj, can you just talk to me a little bit about what you think the difference is between CPMs, digital TV, and TV? And I know you had some experience with that in the past. Therefore, maybe it wasn't so good because you are such a believer in Google and Facebook as being the ability to reach the mass, and that's kind of where you stay. But give me some of your experiences on that to help the crowd out.
Yeah, so one of the things that I tend to do is I'm a big consumer of media. So I've got full DirecTV package. I'm on the internet all the time, and I tend to put myself in the consumer's position when I'm looking at stuff. And just naturally, as a CMO, I do that all the time. And what I found is that when I'm on certain mediums and a banner ad comes up or a display ad comes up, it frustrates me. That's why you have so many ad blockers up like that. And so I actually had never seen that slide, and I think it's a great slide, which is the slide about, I think it was like either response rate or it was just like remembering the ad unit. Remembering the ad unit is really important, right? So one of the things that television has trained us for a long time is to accept advertising, right? So the concept of, I know we like to skip things when we DVR things and things like that, but if an ad really catches your eyes, you kind of engage in it on TV. And so what we tend to do is we've got a testing system on television that we think is pretty top notch. So we're able to convert cost per thousand impressions, so CPMs, to cost per visitor. So real-time spot response, an ad comes on, let's say Big Bang Theory, we immediately test what traffic spikes were on our website. We then model that out in a regression model over 2 months, and we figure out, okay, did that spot work for us? Once you convert those to visitors, we can figure out what the efficiency or the return is for us. When we look at digital, everything we've tested, once again, TrueCar is very unique, is we're a cost per action model, so we don't make money at all unless somebody actually buys a car. So we have a complete closed loop system, so we measure the efficacy of all marketing channels. And what's fascinating is as we start to measure certain channels, you just start to see some people are just looky-loos. Like if you're on a programmatic site and you're looking at, or a programmatic platform, you're looking at, hey, that's not delivering, it's delivering impressions, but it's not delivering any action. And the key is I don't make money off impressions. I make money when people actually go and buy a car. And our dealers make money when people actually go and buy a car. So the beauty of what we do at TrueCar is we just measure everything. And people and vendors will come in all the time and say, you test me, test this. 99% of the time we say no. The 1% of the time we say yes, we just test. So we'll test, we just had a vendor come in the other day on Facebook. And they put up some pretty heady stats, right? Like we can deliver this. And we're like, okay, we'll do a test with you guys. And once again, it's great because our data scientist team has a huge ego, right? So you get a bunch of guys that are algo stat guys that are like, oh, nobody can beat us. And once every blue moon, like we on the Google SEM side, a really incredible, very, very smart group of fellows up in Silicon Valley beat our team. And so then we just implemented their platform. And so we're pretty methodical and thoughtful about what we do at digital. And once again, attribution is something that confuses everybody. Like, I don't do much attribution. I look at the entire channel and the entire mix, and then I make sure, because once again, we're also public, so I've got a 90-day shot clock that if I screw up, I get fired. And so within that shot clock, we measure a combination of okay, I can make my numbers here, then how can I expand into certain things for long-term stuff, so make sure I don't miss the quarter next year as well. So you have to build that baseline. And the one thing that does build the baseline more than anything else is television. Because people watch the ads, people engage in the ads, and then it creates a brand response that lasts much longer. So that's kind of how I look at both sides of it from kind of a CPM perspective and how I think about impressions.
Thank you. So Kierie, along that line, you talk about how important it is with the consumer experience. And I know you are a little bit of a different model in that you are a huge retailer, and you have a huge and what falls under your realm is the e-tailing portion of the business globally. So how do you know? And when we talk about attribution, which I believe is probably one of the most important things that you can do with every media dollar that you spend, to at least try to get directionally, if you can't get crystal clear, which is very hard today in today's marketplace, really understanding the triggers that are pulling response and the right kind of response, and then what the lifetime value is of a customer, or if they're converting. Because a visit is a visit, but are they actually converting? So there are a lot of metrics that you have to follow. But when it comes to your type of business, which is more on the retailer consumer side, tell me a little bit about how you measure whether or not a customer is having the right experience. And also explain to the crowd maybe what went wrong somewhere and what you learned from that. I think that might be interesting.
So I think in thinking about what Neeraj said about attribution, I think that attribution is something where folks are consistently coming to us and saying, we can tell you where everyone's coming from and what last click and last experience was. And I really believe that consumers there's so many touch points that brands and businesses are having with consumers that attribution becomes very difficult, and there are occasions where it can be misleading. So I think you really have to look at what your spend is as a whole and what the business is delivering as a whole, and very carefully play with your marketing mix so you can deliver that right experience for the consumer, which ultimately is going to result in sales and revenue for your organization. So modeling that and playing with new tools and understanding where you can have impact will make a difference. So as an example, at JCS, with our largest profit contributor and one of our largest sales engines, it's a huge direct response television business, and DRTV is a big part of how we educate consumers on this category. We are a leader in the category. Brand recognition is high, household penetration is high, but that TV is an integral part of what we do. So we have long form to educate there, and then we use short form to really drive our retail. So we have tested multiple times, leaving long form there, pulling short form down, and we've seen the impact of POS at retail. So modeling and testing that out, we can project with a great amount of precision what is going to happen based on the TV that we have, how we're buying, how much we're buying, what our weight is, all of that. So through years and years of testing, I feel like we have a pretty good idea about how that's working, and it's an integral part of how we reach consumers, how we acquire consumers, how we educate consumers, and just really part of our relationship and our touch points with consumers. When I think about, you asked for a bad example of experiences, I think that the best thing I would offer is there are many times in my experience as a consumer that I see companies and brands paying a lot of attention to the point of acquisition related to search, either organic or paid, whatever it is. We know any kind of search is a warm lead. Where I get disappointed is when I do click, right? You show up in the right place. When consumers do click, there are many companies that don't deliver you to the right content at the other side of that click. They might take you to a homepage and you click on something much, much more specific or segmented. And I think that immediately is a point of disappointment for consumers. Your bounce is going to go up, they're going to leave, and they're going to be disappointed with the experience that you've served up for them when you're driving that experience. So I think paying attention really carefully, not just to where are you ranking in your organic search or what are the words or categories that you're buying, but the specific experience and content that you deliver on the other side of that click is really, really critical.
Thank you. So along those lines, Boris, can you share with me, us, the crowd here, when you take on a new relationship as a business, and I know in cosmetics was basically a digital business as well as a QVC type brand, and that's really what their business model was. And you've had success with them, and TV I think was a big part of that, and you guys brought them into that arena. But tell me what, from the onset, what you see, because it's not so easy, and this is, I guess, the other rule of thumb is that you don't just create a TV ad and then have success overnight. I think that what I've seen is there's more failures than there are successes in this business. So what is your secret sauce that you, I don't want you to give all the secrets, but sort of arm the crowd with what can they expect? How do you do things differently? And what you do with the failures and how you turn them in and what those learnings turned into and to build businesses.
Thank you. Good question. Yes. So look, this is a high risk business, and content is king. When I say content, there's a lot of checkboxes that we have at Guthy-Renker before we actually make a decision to make a commercial, before we decide to make a show, before we actually invest dollars in infrastructure in determining that, yes, this is the way we want to go. So I think at the end of the day, it comes down to consumer. We have to understand what makes consumer respond to this particular product or service. There's got to be a genuine need in the marketplace, and that need has got to be real. It's not something that's manufactured. And one of the things, I don't know if people know in the audience, but we primarily sell continuity-based products. So for us, the quality of the product has to be very high. And if it's not high, that means people will probably try the product and not continue with it for a long time. So for us, there is, again, a lot of checklists, a lot of things. You mentioned It Cosmetics. Yes, I'm glad that you pointed out our success, not our failures. we've had a few things, misses, and quite frankly, the success happens when every checkbox is checked. It does start with creative. It does start with media buying. A lot of the, in terms of, when you ship out tens of thousands of boxes each and every week, you've got to have a system in place that actually nurtures that experience of the consumer from the moment they see the commercial all the way through when they get the product. They have to be delighted when they get the box, they open the box, they experience the product, and they want to continue receiving the products from your company. So from that perspective, it's not, in Neeraj's case, it's, car is a very expensive consideration and it takes time. With us, which we're much more direct response driven. It is an impulse buy, if you will. Most people do not start out their day by saying, yes, I want to watch a commercial today. I think most people, we interrupt what they're into, and it is about content. It is something that they identify with. It is something that they need. It is something that resonates with them. It's something that is genuine, that is believable, and it's great value. So all of those things, plus many more, that actually make a potential for a successful campaign. And it's not easy, but when you hit it, like with It Cosmetics, it worked out pretty well.
I wanted to, Boris, you sparked a thought, and it's related to failure or success. And I think there are times that failure actually can be a huge success. So an example that from my past that we actually worked with Nancy on was a very large organization had put a lot of time and research and effort into developing a new product. And all the research said that this new product was going to be a huge hit, and there was a real consumer need, and consumers wanted it. But I was able to make a business case with the organization to actually test through direct response television, are consumers really going to, when they have to take out their wallets and really buy this product with their own money, are they going to do it? And we did this test, so I think we probably had maybe $400,000 or $500,000 into development and research and testing and so on and so forth. We made a long form infomercial, put this thing on air, and heard crickets. Crickets. Nothing happened. So we looked at that as a huge win, not as a failure, because the organization was planning to bring this to retail, and the cost that they had estimated what it would take to bring this out and put it in the retail marketplace was $18 million. So we looked at it as we saved the organization $18 million rather than just a failure. So I think that perspective also is really important and can put kind of a different light on tests like this.
That's a really good point.
Let me just follow up. I'll be sure to mention that to Bill Guthie when the show fails. I'll tell him it's a good, we learned something here. It's a good, never mind. I'll take that later.
That's funny. So, okay, so Boris, can you give me some experiences that maybe you had that, you know, were sort of stay away from kind of an experience when it comes to some failures or some challenges that people can learn from?
I mean, look, at the end of the day, we get, thankfully, over the last 20 years, Guthy-Renker has been fortunate that most of the deals come our way. We do not advertise for deals. Products come our way because of the reputation that Bill and Greg have built over the years. I think, again, it's not really about success and failure. I mean, I think we all understand in this industry, you will fail. There's no question. It's just how do you kind of limit those and have, you know, a couple of singles, maybe a couple of doubles, but then a home run makes up for a lot of your, you know, areas where you need improvement. But at the end of the day, you really have to have a good nose for, and I think Bill Guthie and Greg Renker have a very good nose for what they think has a good chance of being received well by the consumers. And I think you as an audience that is trying to kind of decide, do I make an investment in this? Do I try this? Do I produce a television commercial and try this? I think to Neeraj's point, you know, I think majority of our spend online, quite frankly, without television, would not be successful. We've learned the same thing, and Neeraj has been saying this for years, and I 100% agree with him. There's a lot of noise, and there's certainly a lot of case studies that point to that say Facebook even is a viable channel of acquiring customers, and they are to a certain point. Recently, in the last several years, we've had many companies come to us and ask us, you know, they've kind of plateaued at a certain point. It could be 30 million, it could be $100 million in revenue, but at some point they do need television to get that scale, to get that velocity, and to get that brand recognition. And that's really what sets you apart from your competition, because it is really easy to advertise online. It is not easy to make money online. But when you're on television, and it doesn't mean that every television campaign that you launch will be successful. I think with television, you are in fact a category leader if you buy the right, if you buy the right media, if you have a creative and a commercial that really resonates with consumers, I mean, then you have a chance of making something a business. And we've seen success in starting at a point where, again, an idea can quickly sell for $1.2 billion.
It really is all about the unique selling proposition that you're developing, and what is it out there that's really resonating with consumers, and solving a unique problem. I think of Uber, who really has not done 1 ounce of TV advertising before they launched and became the company that they are. And so not everything is right for TV, and not everything has to be right for TV. Uber was a disruptor, TrueCar is a disruptor, and I think given the category, I don't know that TrueCar would have been able to do what Uber does, given equal disruption to some very large conglomerate organizations that don't really care for the taxi cab organization, doesn't really care for Uber, and I don't know, some dealers I know have been very challenged by your disruption, but at the end of the day, consumers will tell you what they want, and when you influence them, and you look at the stats today, and when you influence them with the right messaging, on the right platform, making your ads memorable, I think that's where you can evolve change and growth. So, given that, do you want to talk a little bit about the disruption and some of the challenges and things that maybe you have experienced, and what it took for you to sort of come above it all, Neeraj?
We're not a disruptor anymore. We're a collaborator. I have to say that for a variety of reasons. You don't actually disrupt the automotive industry. You have to end up collaborating with them. They're a very powerful powerful industry. I think when you start with big ideas and you start changing the norm, you've got to be very careful, right? So the reality is in certain industries, in automotive, you've been following Tesla, you've been following Uber, it's an extremely powerful piece. Probably either, if not the number one, but one of the top 2 or 3 most powerful lobbyist organizations in the country. They pay the most state taxes. And so as you bring about products and technologies in this space, I think there's an initial disruption that happens with your product or your experience, but eventually you've got to collaborate. So you see with TrueCar especially, we've been slapped back a couple times, right? I mean, we've had some pretty interesting challenges during our 11 years now of existence, and some of those are self-inflicted. It's not like we haven't shot ourselves in the foot several times, but some of those are just when you are changing the norm. And automotive is an industry that needs change. I mean, I think everybody knows it. Like, one of the things that we're working on when you think about what is the mission of TrueCar, what is the vision of us, is that owning the car, like the process of getting a car, thinking about the new car you're going to get, and when you get it, is super exciting. Like, it's an exciting experience. You get your new car, you're excited, but buying it doesn't have the same type of feeling. It doesn't emote the same type of a feeling. And our goal is to change that. And so in order to change that, you've got to have really progressive dealers. And I think our initial strategy was just be the consumer advocate. Like, literally, price, consumer advocate, and eventually the industry will change. That's not going to happen. So, so what it allowed us to do was, though, on the positive side, what it allows you to do is we built a brand. So we built a really powerful brand very quickly. I mean, in the automotive space, if you think about Kelley Blue Book and Edmunds and Cars.com and AutoTrader and all them, those are really old companies. And TrueCar itself is only 3-4 years old from an advertising perspective, 5 years old from an operational perspective, and we're catching all of them very quickly. And it was because of that consumer advocacy we had in the initial stages that really drove that growth. And now that we've realized that this is a two-sided marketplace, it has to be balanced. Consumers, after all the research we do, consumers don't want to screw dealers, and dealers don't actually want to screw consumers. It's a lot of misinformation that goes out there, and it's a lot of the communication. You get, I got to go talk to my boss, then you go to the back room, and you go to F&I, finance and insurance, and then all of a sudden there's a guy still with a laminated card who comes out, you're like, where's your iPad? There's just interesting things that happen during the car buying process that don't need to happen anymore. And dealers know that. The real progressive dealers are well on board on this. So I think the next evolution of disruption, and most people are going through this, Uber's going through right now, I think even Massachusetts is now charging them a tax. Like, they're going to have to play ball with the internal systems that are here, right? Because there's a bunch of legacy infrastructure and legacy legislature. I mean, we've been sued, I don't know how many times, 20, 30 times. And you got to fight through that. And you got to, in the end, what you got to do is you got to believe that transparency, which is our key tenet, right? Having transparency in the entire experience is a better way to do business. And it's a better way for both sides. It's a better way for buyers, and it's a better way for sellers. And if you believe that and you keep to that mission, and you get both progressive dealers and consumers to believe in that, at the other end of it, all tides rise. I mean, there's times when you meet dealers, you meet dealers from two different areas. One will say, yeah, that mobile phone thing, that's going away. Right? You'll be in meetings where you hear that, and you have to adjust to that. And then there's dealers that say, yeah, transparency all the way. Like, we believe we'll open up everything. And we believe that that'll actually increase automotive retailing by 10-15% overall. So you think about a 17 million new car market today with a better car buying experience. Some people believe that people actually push off buying a car for 6 to 12 months because they don't actually want to go to buy it, which is fascinating. Like, it's an incredible product with such beautiful design and freedom and all these things that you'll pull it up not to do that. So when I think about disruption and how to operate within it, you got to be very careful, because the initial disruptor is not always the person that succeeds. sometimes it's the person that paves the way, and then somebody comes in behind and actually reaps all the benefits. But in automotive, what's great is you build a moat around yourself, because you have to go state by state. So there's a bunch of stuff that you have to solve going along that path.
I think to your point, and to sort of bring it all in, no matter what you do, if you're the first to market, and you just can't always think that because I am now the number one, that you're always going to stay there. It does take, it's a relentless effort. And tying it all together, I think at the end of the day, understand what you're doing, the triggers that are promoting your brand message or your sales message, and being relentless about it. And I think that kind of wraps that up. And then at the end of the day, take care of your customers, because they'll take care of you, right? So I think we have about 10 minutes, and I just wanted to sort of open up this time to the audience to see if there were any questions for our panelists. Here, Rebecca.
Hi. Well, I know this was a panel for advertising on TV, but I hear a lot of TrueCar ads on podcasts as well. I was wondering if you might want to talk about that, how that's gone for TrueCar, or did I miss that at the beginning?
Yeah, no, I didn't talk about that. That's a great question. I love podcasts. So a lot of our media buying is based on stuff that I actually really enjoy the content. No. So to be honest with you, shifting audio is happening in real time. Now you can't measure a lot of this stuff, right? So the reality is it then becomes a CPM and reach play, right? So Norm Pattis, who's the founder of Podcast One, has become a great friend. He's probably top 3 salesman in the history of the world. But Norm is great, and Norm was the founder of Westwood One Radio, started Podcast One, and then you just, at some levels, it can't all be done by robots and data scientists, right? I mean, if I trusted my data scientists on everything, we wouldn't be where we are. You've got to have, to be a CMO, to be a successful business person, you've got to have a little bit of gut as well. And so I think the reality is that as you see downloads start increasing more and more on podcasts, and you look at your own life, right? And I've got a group of millennials that are always, downloading podcasts, be it sport podcasts, be it, Freakonomics, be it whatever it may be. You can buy really great live reads, which end up being shifted, but live reads, so they're native. One of the things I'm really focused on as an advertiser is native content. So native content, so whenever I do radio or whenever I do podcasts, I actually go and meet every person who does my reads. So because I feel like when they think about third-party automotive, they think of us as a lead gen site, just another lead gen site, and that, when they read that, like Howard Stern once read a spot of ours, and it was negative for our brand. Because when Howard doesn't show any energy or enthusiasm for your product, his listeners can actually hear that in his voice, and they realize that Howard hated doing this, so we hate that product. And it's fascinating. So whenever we do, like I'm meeting Colin Cowherd next week, I love his show on sports. We're going to take him a little bit through the history of TrueCar and what we're actually trying to do, and then you'll hear in the spot the authenticity of the human when they speak about TrueCar. It's from a very different emotional chord, and that connects to listeners or viewers or whoever they may be. So that's when I think about podcasts. I won't do it until I actually meet the people reading.
So just a follow-up question, because you were saying it's hard to judge how many sales or how many downloads come through that. I know they all have a promo code,
Ours don't.
Oh, really? So this is all just about awareness?
Just think about it when she just talked about attribution, right? So she talked about attribution. If you are constantly trying to attribute every point of contact you have, you are going to drive yourself crazy. So when I think about it, I've got a base set of media that I buy that I can track somewhat well. I'm not one to lie and say I know exactly where Boris came in from and why he bought. I don't really care. I care that Boris bought, and then I made my P&L. Because Boris has an LTV of $300 within our system, and my overall spend is $200. So I'm making a $100 margin on an aggregate, and my UVs, my unique visitors, are growing. So when I look at podcasts, I think of, okay, I can spend X amount of money per month on podcasts. I'm getting an impression load. I don't always believe it. Actually, Mike Wunsch, one of my data guys, is here. We don't actually believe that the downloads are actually that many. But even if it's a fraction of that, by the way, the CPMs in podcasts are really low. And so I just think about it on a reach basis. So now I'm spending X amount of money for additional reach, and it's fitting within my P&L on a 90-day process. So it's kind of a combination of gut plus data science plus, once again, the 90-day shot clock on my P&L. So one day when you hear that the CMO's been fired, I've made a mistake. Right? So, but I'm okay with it. It's also fun. You got to have fun when you're marketing.
I think we have time for one more question over here.
Thanks. I'm a marketer, so this has been a really interesting conversation, touched on a lot of different things, kind of the role of TV and shifting media consumption patterns, attribution. But the thing that I think about and kind of obsess on is the journey of the consumer through the funnel, right? From the top of the funnel down to the bottom to that Z-mod. And trying to figure out, not so much attribution because you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure that out, but what is the role in which, or the order in which people do things, how they consume their information and research a purchase, whether it's a car or cosmetics or what have you, and trying to crack the code on what is the sort of the right way and order in which to engage people and that combination of media and what role TV plays in that. I think of TV as sort of air cover and that drives everything else. But from you guys, what new methodologies or even marketing technologies are you encountering that help you kind of crack that code and figure out how to guide people through that research and decision-making funnel?
I'll start.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, I think it's important. Obviously, the funnel efficiency and optimizing for that is great. I think it all starts at the top, and I think I mentioned earlier that content is king. So I think it all starts with the message, and I think the longer you're able to spend with your customer, again on TV, and actually explain the unique attributes of your product, the easier your job will be all the way down the funnel until they purchase. However, if you measure and the experience of where a consumer starts their journey is from a banner or whatever else there is out there, that my sense is you can measure all you want, but again, the customer may not be as qualified. It's going to be really tough for you to make that connection and, more importantly, make that sale and keep a customer for a long period of time.
I think that, so related to content, I think when we think about our funnel and where consumers are in their journeys, which we have a methodology around that, we've mapped out based on what we can attribute and how we know consumers are coming in, what content consumers really need at what stage they are in their particular funnel. So understanding that and being able to reach the consumer segments at where they are in the funnel with that right content is what we've really found to be bringing us, over the edge when we're trying to capture consumers and really look at their longevity and keep them around for a long time. So I think content and the right content at the right time for the consumer segment is really, really critical there.
So, Neeraj, I think it would be great to get your perspective because
Yeah.
you don't really control sort of like the close at the end because you're.
No, there's a
you're
bunch of
dealing
things.
with that.
By the way, it's a great question. So there's a ton of research on the consumer journey for automotive, right? So it's a 6-month process. So we tend to look at things from T0 to T6, right? So anything we do is within those parameters. But TrueCar's product actually only functions at T5.8, right? So we're today we provide you with pricings and connections with the dealer. So we do nothing before that. So when you think about the journey and when you touch them, I just need to stay in top of mind throughout the process from a marketing perspective. So you think about TV, radio, all those things. And then when you're getting ready to buy a car, you come to TrueCar. So we get a ton of traffic that comes in through all these different mediums and drops, right? So we have a decent drop-off rate that comes off, which I'm totally fine with, by the way. It's they've gotten awareness, they know what our product is. When they come back and they're ready to buy, they'll come. What the real big thing we need to work on more is the concept of should we have a product and content for the shopping journey? Because shopping is done very linearly. I have a very big belief on why linear search eventually goes away. There's a great article in TechCrunch about Google and could it go the way of Yahoo. It's a fascinating read for everybody. But linear search is a really basic way to do search. And if you think about discovery is where everything's going. So how do you play in a discovery world today where instead of saying, hey, human, you need to go and I need an SUV. And okay, you go down an SUV path. And then I need 3 third-row seats, so I go down a third-row seat path. That's super linear. And that's how everything's done on digital today. So the real explosion of things is, hey, I just moved to LA. I've got 2 kids, and I need a third-row seat. Open up a whole discovery angle with me on a product perspective and a marketing perspective. That's a very different way to think about where search is going. And it's not even search anymore, it's discovery. So that's why if you see Google more and more is embedding content above SEM. Like if you've noticed it, like in travel, they've lost so many travel dollars that now they're embedding their own travel stuff within search because it's tough to do the user experience. But how many people start their search on Google nowadays? You probably started in-app and whatever your app experience is. So it's fascinating. So we do a lot of meta thinking about where we think things are going to go. And from a marketing perspective, can we play in a discovery-based journey in automotive with Google? I mean, everything, search and intent will start there, but then it's about navigating through that. So that's, I mean, we're very in tune with, there's like 21 touch points in automotive. You go to an OEM site, you go to a third-party site, you go all over, you go to dealer sites. So we just try to navigate within that.
Right. Well, I think that concludes our time, and I appreciate your attendance here today, and I thank the panelists for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you.